Good day. I'm Christian Anthony Gianuta from Bachelor in Secondary Education, major in English. And for today, I'm going to discuss to you about the language theory and the art of understanding by Kurt Mueller Vollmer. But first, I'm going to give you a quote by Friedrich Schlegel. He said that nobody understands himself only being himself and not also somebody else at the same time. Um, yes, truly, because no one knows us better than ourselves. We know how we feel given every situation, and we also know who we were exactly during every stage of our life. We have realized our own strengths and weaknesses, and during many situations more than anyone else. The inclusion of my report are from table of contents. Number one is the poetics, language, and hermeneutics. The second one is a new conception of language. Third one is language theories, issues, and directions. And the last part is the hermeneutics, philology, and the concept of understanding. Let us discuss first the poetics, language, and hermeneutics. Poetics, language, and hermeneutics. A persistent concern for problems of language that was shared by most Romantic writers did not come to them as an afterthought. Rather, their novel Poetics, which positioned or posited the primacy of the creative imagination over an inherited system of rules and conventions, would make them focus on the poetic medium, language itself, and put them on a collision course not only with 18th century neoclassical aesthetics, but also with linguistic opinions that had been handed down to them by Enlightenment philosophers and theoreticians. Thus, the Romantics felt obligated to raise for themselves the fundamental issues of language, that is, its relation to thought, the nature or reality and human creativity, and to articulate linguistic theories that would be relevant to their own endeavors. This was their way of breaking with the rationalist and empiricist traditions and the deeply ingrained and representational notion of language upon which neoclassicism had erected its mimetic ideals of literature. The next slide is, if the Romantics' preoccupation with language was a direct outgrowth of their new poetics, the same holds true for their interest in hermeneutics, or in the words of Schleiermacher, I believe, the art of interpretation. We must, however, distinguish between this art and its theory on the one hand, and the new attitude of the Romantics toward poetry, literature, philosophy, and the culture that accompanied them. What mattered to them was first of all a sympathetic understanding of the individuality and the creative spirit manifest in products of the mind, rather than any judicious attempt to judge these by the preconceived standards of neoclassicist aesthetics. The poetic spirit for the Romantics had many incarnations in different individuals and national literatures, ancient and modern. Yet, accepting the multiplicity of individual spirits also entailed a confirmation of their own distinct being. Let's now proceed to the second topic, a new conception of language. Romantic notions about language manifest themselves in a variety of ways and in different genres of text. Linguistic ideas are frequently found integrated into literary and poetic text, as in Coleridge's The Ancient Mariner, or more conspicuously in Novalis, The Apprentices at Sais, where use is made of Augustinian semiology to bring across the idea correspondence between mind and nature. Often, linguistic reflections are a are a part of longer or shorter theoretical texts, as with Schlegel and Stale, yet most important are the outright theoretical statements that writers associated with early Romantic movement have produced. They represent but different versions of the non-representational view of language that is characteristic of the early Romantic movement from about 1795 to 1816. Among the Romantic writers and theorists, August Wilhelm Schlegel, the older of the brothers, was the first for whom language became a critical issue. With impatience, according to him, I am waiting for your poetic letters. His brother Friedrich wrote to him in the autumn of 1795. What good and beautiful things will they bring? Undoubtedly, there will be much that is entirely new and foreign to me. We start from very different intuitions and concepts. It was precisely in the area of language philosophy that August Wilhelm would undertake something akin to the transcendental approach to literary theory attempted by his brother Friedrich, namely to provide a linguistic basis for the new poetics. That his role within Romanticism has often wrongly been confined to that of the ubiquitous critic translator, whose main contribution was to help his brother's novel ideas to achieve international success, is due to a long-standing neglect of the linguistic dimension of Romanticism in general and of the linguistic work of Wilhelm in particular. Let us proceed now to the third topic of mine, which is the language, theories, issues, and directions. When August Wilhelm, Schlegel praised Bernardi's work in his brother's journal Europa in 1803, he had already overcome the shortcomings of his earlier attempts. He wholly shared Bernardi's views regarding language, its ideological structure, and the importance of language philosophy for understanding of poetry, of literature, and of culture in general. He expressed his own ideas on these matters in a series of lectures between 1798 and 1804, held at Jena and in Berlin, in which he divulged the new Romantic philosophy in systematic fashion before a public forum, thus setting the stage for its dissemination in Germany and abroad. We can single out some major components in Schlegel's argument that help us summarize his position and measure out the circumference of the Romantic conception of language found in most other writers. The first is the attempt to overcome the dichotomy of 18th century language theories to explain the origin of language from their animal communication or as a result of arbitrary convention. To simply combine the two, a solution he had still favored in 1795 essay would not do, for there is no way for instinct-triggered animal communication to evolve into a language system based on a convention. For the last part of my report, which is the hermeneutics, philology, and the concept of understanding. Although it has been widely accepted that 20th century hermeneutic philosophy and interpretation theories have their roots in early Romanticism, our knowledge of its complex hermeneutic theories and practices is still rather insular. Much more needs to be learned about the actual contribution made by individual authors, the relationship to hermeneutic tradition, and the intense exchange of ideas that occurred among them, before a full assessment of the important body of thought can be undertaken. So to understand the new hermeneutics and properly assess its achievement, we must distinguish between its two major components. So, nasa two major components. The first concerns the transformation of classical philology into a cultural science rather, whose task was defined as the critical authentication of the extant bodies of texts from Greek and Roman civilization through a process of reconstitution, classification, and interpretation with the aim of reconstructing in their entirety the cultures that had produced them. The second component is general hermeneutics, or hermeneutic theory proper as an independent field of inquiry, and it is centered around the notion of understanding. So this has been Christian Anthony Giannuta from Bachelor in Secondary Education, major in English, saying thank you for listening. Thank you. Bye.